All righty, guys. We are live. Chop it up live. Chop it up live. I am going to have a guest on here in just a second. But let me tell you guys what we're talking about. So, yesterday, Henry McMaster, he made an announcement. And the announcement that he made, I'm sorry, guys, give me 2 seconds. Um, I just want to make sure. I'm going to have a guest on, and I just want to make sure that my guest will be able to get in here properly, just to just in case. All right. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. All right, cool. All right. So yesterday, Governor McMaster made an announcement. Okay, he made an announcement about the grant money listed as from the SAFE grants to go to basically private schools. Now, here's the thing, guys. And if you're watching, you can hear me, please make sure you drop a wave sign or anything like that. And also, too, when you guys see me looking down, looking at my watch just to make sure that my guest does not have any issues. 1 second, guys. Let me see. For whatever reason, I'm making sure my guest gets on. So, all right. So, sorry, guys. All right. So, all right, good. So, I did see that you guys can hear me. Thanks, Tori. Okay. And so, with the SAFE grants, and again, guys, I just want you guys to know the governor can use this money how he sees fit. Oh, hold on 1 second, guys. Let me bring our guest in at the stream. All right, there we go. Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, yeah, I can. How are you?
I'm good. All right, good. So now we're in the money, guys. So for those of you who are just watching, again, welcome to Chop It Up Live. First of all, is it Saani? Did I say that right?
It's Saani.
Saani. Okay, I'm
Saani, yes,
sorry.
ma'am. No, you
So
good.
Mr. Saani Perry is on, guys. So again, if you're watching, you can drop comments, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. I can see the comments. We'll address them. So today we're talking about the SAFE grants that Governor McMaster did a press conference about, which I was totally disappointed. Let me just start
Yeah.
there. Mr. Perry is the South Carolina Education Director of Inclusion and Diversity. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
All right. So first of all, I want you to break down for us these SAFE grants, because again, the governor can use this money how he chooses, but a lot of us, of course, has a problem with you using public funds for private institutions.
Correct.
So break that down for us.
So, he went on his press conference yesterday and announced that he was going to give $32 million of his $48 million budget to, scholarships for private education. Now, granted, he can, like you said, he can spend that money however he wants. However, most people would assume federal dollars are going to use for public, public use.
Right. Right.
I think what was most surprising to us is, they tried to push it. It gives students that, are at a disadvantage an opportunity that they don't have. But, we looked up the school that he did the press conference from, and for a high school student, the tuition is $9,000. So if you're given a scholarship for $6,500 and that student is truly disadvantaged, they still can't even attend that school. So
right.
What the true purpose was, I'm not sure. But in my personal view, I don't think it had anything really to do with the students or the coronavirus pandemic. I think he was trying to get back at others, but hey.
And okay, here's my thing too with that. As a parent, I have a 13-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Right.
And let's just say I apply for this scholarship and I get $6,500. Again, even if it's $8,500, I still have to come up with the rest.
Right.
But what about when you can't afford after the fact? Then you have to uproot your child and go back to public schools. Now, one of the things that a question that came to my inbox, and it's all in regards to the quality of education.
Correct.
So, do you feel, or can you speak to, and I was one of these people that I guess you can say, in a sense, felt this. You know, I don't want these private institutions to give a lesser quality of an education because there are now students at the school with vouchers.
Right.
And I think that that's crazy, but it is what it is.
Right.
Have you seen any pushback in regards to that?
From private school teachers?
Or just
Just in general.
people in general.
So I would say, again, I'm the diversity and inclusion officer for SC for Ed. So we have a Facebook group that's filled with thousands of educators. We're over 32,000 educators in there. Several of them actually teach at private schools, and one of the things that I thought was most interesting, was their viewpoint on things. Even those who are at private schools are like, it really doesn't matter if they're getting vouchers or not. They're still not going to be able to afford the daily fees, the lunch fees, the clothes. Like, the vouchers aren't doing enough to help those kids out. So it really doesn't matter if they're doing the vouchers. It's not about the kids. It's not about the quality of education. Not to mention that if you look overall at the success rate of private schools and public schools, while there are some private schools that perform much better, overall, that lately they've been performing just about the same. So I don't know that they would necessarily water down instruction or provide a lower quality education. I definitely think that the social life for students who may be voucher students probably would look a lot different from students whose parents, just fork out that money and, it's whatever. Because again, you're going to be seen as that kid that's less than. And that's been a topic of conversation, is what is that social emotional balance going to look like for those kids who are, let's be real, probably a different color, different race, different, ethnic backgrounds. How are they going to be treated in that environment?
Right. And to be honest with you, I really feel like this money is just for those who are there to help them stay there.
Correct.
I mean, to be honest with you, because when you look at it, it's what, 300% of the poverty level. So that's like $78,000 in a sense. And if you think about it, that's keeping those people there. You know what I mean? So let's kind of switch gears. We're still going to come back and talk about these safe grants, but we're going to briefly switch gears to talk about COVID.
Okay.
We know that COVID has had, of course, a huge impact. And let me just say, y'all, I'm so sick of Betsy DeVoe and her comment that only 0.2% of students are likely to die from COVID. Ma'am, that's 14,000 kids. We don't want any of our children to die.
Correct.
What are you talking about? But as far as reopening schools, what do you think the real plan could be?
Vanyetta, I'm going to be honest. Think about schools, right? If there's a lice outbreak, how quickly can the school get that under control? Not very quickly, right? That lice spreads quickly, right? There's so much that we can do to try to keep the environment safe, but overall, it's going to be very difficult to do that. There's not enough staff in a building to make sure that every kid is 6 feet away from another kid and that they're not going to touch or share a fork or share a drink or, whatever the case is. It's just impossible to do no matter what guidelines we put in place. I think the best plan really would be, to follow the DHEC guidelines. Right now, they're saying if you're high spread, you need to remain virtual. So our push has been virtual until safe. Stay virtual until it's safe to go back on a hybrid model. I think as a whole, we missed the mark this summer. We should have spent time really looking at how to make virtual learning better, how to make it more challenging. But instead, we spent all this time, developing plans that McMaster pretty much try to throw away anyway.
Right, because at the end of the day, I think that for students that you have to, especially for, I would say that core middle school, 6th to 8th grade, because my oldest son is heading to 8th grade. They really almost have to be taught how to learn virtually.
Right.
And then you have some situations, unfortunately, where you have some kids who are behind, and there are some teachers that don't care. They're just passing them on through. So those students that are behind, then you come up and you have to learn how to work virtually and then learn new material. Some students are kinesthetic learners. They're hands-on. They really need to be there.
Right.
So what do you think an option should be for? There are some parents that want their kids to go to school. What do you feel about that?
And I've heard those remarks from people. I just feel like my child needs to be in school. That's the only way that they can learn. And I get it. My view as an educator is I want to be in the school with your child too. I'll be honest, I do not like teaching online. It's not my favorite thing. But at the same time, if one of my students gets sick and dies, I don't really want that to be on me, right? And I don't want the classmates or the parents to have to deal with that. I'd much rather find a way to work virtually with your students to make sure that they're safe. However, if they have to go back, I 100% believe we need to be on a hybrid model. That way we can make sure the kids are social distance. And even though they say kids can't spread it to each other, if a teacher is sick and doesn't have symptoms and then gets that kid sick, to me, that's a bigger concern. So we need to make sure that we can do the social distancing, but also we need to make sure that we can have, things in place to make sure that the building is being disinfected regularly so that there's no, lingering bacteria, anything like that within the classrooms in the building.
Awesome. So we're going to switch gears again, this time, because with Chop It Up Live, we kind of switch gears to kind of different subjects, but all under an umbrella.
Okay.
So let's move to how these funds could have been allocated better.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I suggest as well is for students in rural areas who do not have broadband.
Correct.
Like in Charlotte, there were instances where they were outfitting school buses with Wi-Fi, and they would deliver breakfast and lunch, and then they would be able to get Wi-Fi. Like, how do you feel these funds could have been allocated so much better? Because really quick, our teachers are already underpaid.
Preach.
That $38 million, even if they only use 10 million of it to give teachers a raise, like that still would have been better than absolutely nothing.
Correct.
So how do you feel like these funds could have been allocated better?
One, I appreciate you talking about the raise, but that's, for teachers, that's not even the most important part, right? So I think what's interesting, again, talking about McMaster, you're requiring, or his suggestion was for all schools to go back 5 days face-to-face, right? Now, he has not done anything to help districts do that. You've never implemented a statewide mask ordinance. You've never really shut the state down well enough for us to, make our numbers go down. But in addition, that money that he just gave to private schools yesterday, you could have used to buy students. You could have used to buy plexiglass for desks and for classrooms so that students can interact with each other without potentially getting sick, right? You could have done that to hire more cleaning staff, more school nurses, anything to help keep the environment clean, help protect students.
Right.
And then lastly, teacher, salaries were frozen this year. So we're not getting our annual step increase because it's frozen. You could have used that money to also make sure that teachers get their steps, especially if we're going back in this type of environment. So there are lots of ways that money could have been used that it's just not being used.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I guess, what's so upsetting is, just because private institutions are the governor's, is his personal preference.
Correct.
The majority of the state can't afford this.
No.
I'm from a small town, Edgefield, South Carolina.
Yes, ma'am. I noticed that.
Just a few years ago, the high school stopped having a segregated prom. So good and well, these monies are not being allocated correctly. No. And then you have, I guess I'm just upset about it because I feel like, for lack of better words, our public school system is about to be a shit show. And, it's upsetting because, I have one child in public school and another child on his way. So the next thing that we'll go into is, what do you suggest that us parents can do to, what can we consider to make the right decision for our children to keep them safe if they have to go back?
Absolutely. I definitely want to cater to our working parents, right? The parents who have to go to work in order to keep food on the table, keep their kids clothed. And school is one of those outlets where the kids can come, you know what I'm saying, so that they can do what they need to do to provide for the family. 100%, I understand you wanting to send your kids to school, and I support you sending your kids to school. What I would say from the parent perspective is that parent voice is real loud, right? So you need to make sure that you're at your district offices, demanding that things are done correctly, that everything is going to be safe, that things are going to be clean. Again, I don't think anybody can 100% guarantee that we can protect your child just with the nature of school. Right. I also think that you need to be contacting your government, right? And making sure that things like yesterday don't happen. You know what I'm saying? We can't have our public dollars going to private institutions. It's just not reasonable, right? It's not protecting the people. And like you said, their kids might be going to private school, but our kids are not. So what are you doing to protect our kids when we elected you to be in that position, right? Like you're literally crapping on everybody who is, a regular citizen that's not in your shoes. So make that voice heard and contact those that you need to contact.
And in addition to that, when it's time to vote, please vote in your local elections.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you don't, again, look at the situation that we're in. Some people are over 50, over 60, and still only voting in the presidential election.
Correct.
And it's more to it than that. This is why, for lack of better words, I told you guys earlier, we are in a complete shit show. And there are some districts in South Carolina that fare off better than others. And at the end of the day, if we don't make our voices heard, like you're saying, going to the district office, and then also too, holding everybody accountable.
Absolutely.
So as a parent, that means holding the teachers accountable,
yep.
the principals accountable, the superintendent accountable, all the way up the chain. Because if we don't, I don't even know. I'm even wondering, can we even afford for our kids to go back to school if most of this extra money was given to private institutions? Do you think that this is something that we're still able to afford as a state?
Well, I'll be honest, at every level, I agree, you got to keep people accountable, but a lot of this is out of our hands, right? So when you're talking about the issues in education, the quality not being what you think it should be, that's sort of out of our hands, right? Because the state's not funding public schools the way that it should. It's been underfunding public schools for years. And now we're underfunding it even more, right? So are we able to do it? Yes, because the people that are actually working in education will make things shake, right? We'll do what we have to do for our kids. But at the end of the day, it's those, your city councils, your state government, those are the people that you really need to be hitting and saying, hey, like, you need to be supporting our kids. You need to be pumping this money into our schools, because otherwise, you're right. I mean, we can't provide all the resources that we're trying to without the funds.
Right. Last question, and then we'll get to our wrap up. What do you feel that we could go to our city council and our government? Tell us exactly what you think you educators need that we can ask for to make it better for you.
I would say most educators right now are asking, all levels of government to fully fund education, right? Fully fund the base student cost, right? That's taking care of any resources students need for instruction. That takes care of meals. That takes care of salaries. That takes care of anything we need to make the system function, right? We can't say we're fully functioning if we don't have all the money to do that. So as we educators are doing that, we need our parents with us, right? Because we're not the only ones taking care of those kids. They're yours too, right? So we have to work together and say, hey, we need you to fully fund education. All that money that you're spending on frivolous things that are, keeping the rich rich and the poor poor, we need you to cut that out, and we need you to actually give the money to the people that you're serving.
Exactly. And as parents, we have to do our parts too. Because one thing my mom always told me, you have to be the champion of your own child.
That's right.
So if we don't hold everyone accountable to ensure that our schools are fully funded as they should be, if $30+ million of public money, of our tax dollars, can go to a private school that we can't even send afford to send our children to.
That's right.
Come on, somebody.
Somebody needs to be making some noise.
Correct. And when you make noise, things start to rattle. When they start to rattle, they start to shake. When they start to shake, things start to move.
That's right.
So I'm just and everyone, if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my notes. And if y'all see me sipping, just know I'm sipping a smoothie, nothing more. Just want to make sure everybody knows that. I think I got everything. The only other thing I was going to say is it was so ironic that he made the announcement from a private school that costs way more than what the grant is. Now, do you think that it's going to affect children if some parents are able to get the grant and able to afford for the first year, and then the students have to go back to public school? Do you think that uprooting will be a lot for the kids?
Yes and no. I think it depends on the age of the child. I think the younger the kid is, you think about like a 7-year-old, right? They're used to being in their little public school, and now they're moving to this little private school. So they're whole view of school is now changed from one to another, and then they have to go back, right? So their friend groups are changing, the way they picture school, the way school works and functions is different. So it'll definitely have an impact on their social, right, and their emotional. I think the older kids it won't hit as much, but it'll still have an impact, definitely. And I think that's the big concern is after that 1 year, how are you going to afford to stay, right? So
right, because that's a whole $10,000, and a lot of people right now, because of the pandemic, are suffering through pay cuts.
correct.
Some people do not have a job at all,
Right.
so you got to be able to afford the uniforms, food, all of these other extra things.
Transportation.
Correct. Because what about the kids who are in? There are like private schools in rural areas, but for those that can't get there, what if their parents don't have a working vehicle, or they just live too far? Like, what are we going to do? I just don't think it was well thought out. I think it was just a favor, and it's all of our tax money gone to a favor.
That's correct.
But yeah, but thank you so much for joining me today. Like I said, we want to have a quick chat just to break some things down and just to hear from an educator's perspective on these SAFE grants.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
All right, no problem. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys. So that was our episode of Chop It Up Live. Just a quick one, because with the SAFE grants, like I said earlier, guys, sorry to say, it was just a shit show, for lack of better words. Because again, you're utilizing public funds, tax money, to go to a private school that the majority, we're talking over what, 70%, 80% of the state can't even afford to send their children to. And then even if you give a grant, and notice the key word, up to $6,500, you might not even get the full $6,500. Even in that, unless they're going to drop tuition extremely low, it's not going to cover it. And then if you can't afford it the next year, what do you have to do? Uproot your child. So if you guys are watching the playback, I'm gonna, or you're just joining, excuse me, I'm about to end it so you can watch the playback. Leave your comments still. I would love to see them, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook. All right, so I don't know when I'll be back with Chop It Up Live, probably in another week or so. It's most likely going to happen now, like during the day, because my baby at school, so I can do it, without any interruptions. And guys, just watch the playback, and I hope you enjoy it. Bye.